Good afternoon, everyone. We are live. Welcome to First Fridays. And today's topic, we are talking about how pursuing higher education impacts couples and relationships. And we have with us Laura, who is in you're going into your fourth year, right?
I am.
You're her fourth year at William James College.
Finally here.
It's here. So, Laura, introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about why you wanted to have this conversation about this topic, and then we'll dive in. We'll start talking about it.
So, my name is Laura Smith. I am in my last year of my doctorate program at William James College. I am currently a therapeutic clinician for BPS. And I chose this topic because I was having conversations with multiple friends and family members who some were married, some were not, some in relationships. And as one partner chose out to gain higher education or education period for growth, what seemed to happen, relationships seem to branch off from one another, where one couple became angry, mean, language became condescending and hurtful towards the other one. And so I wanted to reach out, speak to people who might be experiencing, who might not be experiencing. But my goal was to speak to couples who have been able to manage and keep their relationship strong while one or both were going through higher education.
I love that. I think the topic in itself, I don't think we always think about, I think we just pick. Sometimes people have conversations about going back to school. Other people I'm just going back to school and then come home, tell the spouse. Some people are single, but it may affect their children. And so I know we're specifically talking about couples today, but I think that this is a topic that we don't often talk about enough. And so I'm excited that you even brought this to talk about, because even as you've been talking to people about it over these last couple of months, people have stories and people have situations and people this is my first year and this is a great thing to talk about because we've been struggling, because it takes you away from the norm of what people are expecting you to show up as before you went to school. And so, listen, I love it. We're going to be talking about over the rest of July. Laura's interviewing some couples about it. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into what are some practical things that you can do before you decide to go to school, while you're in the program. And it could be any level of education that you were in. So you ready to dive into the conversation? I'm
ready.
All right. So tell me a little bit about your experience. I know we had talked a little bit about your experience yourself, because I believe, we talk from the things that we've experienced so that we can help others. So
correct.
Tell me about your experience in this topic.
So another great reason was because I've shared with you, Dr. Lavonya, was in private, was I remember dating a guy, and he thought I spent so much time in my education, and this is when I was doing my second master's degree, that I didn't have time for him. And I was like, yes, but you have to understand what the focus is. And if you're thinking long term, I'm thinking long term. I don't want to ask somebody years, down the line, hey, can I help you? Hey, can I bag that for you? So if I have the chance, the opportunities to make it greater for me, it's not just me, it's both of us. And I remember where there were language coming out eventually, oh, you think you're all that. And I'm like, well, explain that. What does that mean? Or you think you're better. And I was like, so explain that. What does that mean? And years later, he then apologized. He came back and apologized and said, I didn't understand. But if he was able to communicate that with me, we could have had a communication about what it would have looked like or what it was looking like then. And today I'm in a stronger, healthier relationship where he's more supportive, and he understands, and we're kind of, on the same track of, I understand when he has to study and he understands when I have to study, but we also have a great relationship because we know how I've learned how to communicate things, and he also does. So I thought, like, if I was able to get through this, and what it was that held back prior, how could I help other people? Or could I help other people? Because I think education is great. And I think that a lot of us want it. We're just afraid to take that step forward. And if we have the person that we're with to support us, we would, a lot of us would live out our dreams.
You mentioned communication earlier when you were describing if he was able to communicate differently. And I think we use the word communication so loosely, right? We just got to communicate better. But some people communicate well. Some people express their feelings verbally. Some people can write their feelings down. Some people don't even know what they're feeling until they feel it. And they're like, I don't even know what this is. And so when we talk about communication, are we talking about communication before we even get into the program, when we're thinking about the program? Are we bringing them into the decision-making of whether or not we go to school? Like, where do we start the communication about the dreams and aspirations that we have? When do we start that?
So I always believe, like, communication starts right from the beginning, but it's also learning to know one another. So the first thing that I've done in my, it's new, but it's in my relationship was, and I remember he actually brought it to me, was the 4 love language. Like, which one is your love language? Oh, wow. This is how he communicates. This is how I communicate. So, like, learning one another. So even if it's nonverbal, how do we respond, right? What is it that we are seeking for in life? Where's my path going? Where's your path going? What direction are you driving to? And so once I've learned that, I begin to, because I love to read. I start introducing him to what I like, and then I had to learn what he liked. And so in the communication, it was, where are you now? Where are you going? What are your 5-year? What's your plan in 5 years? We can say 2 right now, but let's make it 5. And am I included? And if I am, how much? So we talked about that, and like, also communication in the 5-year. We also have to start including income, right? So what's my salary looking like? What's your salary looking like? And if one wants to go to school, what's the finance cost, and where is it coming from? What bank?
You done said some good stuff right there. Okay, let's let's do one thing at a time. Okay. So you talked about the love languages, the 5 love languages. Love that because everybody is different, right? And so if you can date people in higher education and have 2 different totally experiences based off of what the needs of that person is, right? Because everybody is different. So getting to know your partner, love that. That's a great point that you made. But that takes time, right? It takes time. It takes energy. It takes intentionality. You can't get to know your partner unless you're intentional about having those conversations, which is completely separate from the higher education conversations, because it's about getting to know that person, and that person wants more knowledge in a specific area for a specific purpose. But it's getting to know who it is that you're
and you just said something, Dr. Lavonya. You said getting to know that person, but is that the person that you want? What do you want with this person? So first of all, you have to get to know the person, but you have to get to know thyself, right? Because you have to know who you are. What are your behaviors? Are you watching his behaviors or her behaviors? What are you paying attention to? But do you know you? What are you bringing in? Because what we've learned in life in these days, because so much has been shared, is there's this thing called generational trauma. What are you bringing? What are you carrying? What are you hiding? Right? So we have to get to know ourselves and be willing to expose us to them. Right?
Say more about that. When you say expose us to them, what does that mean?
If this is your person, you have to be open. You have to know that what is it that what triggers does this person have? Do they have any, right? Are you willing to be a participant in what traumas they now have or they're carrying with them? And how well do you know yourself to help them heal while you're either healed or healing? How what's your language of communication? How do you communicate? Right? What's your peace? Are you bringing peace or are you bringing more drama to this person? Because even if you have the higher education, there's still setbacks. How do you heal with your setbacks? How do you deal with them? Is it possible? What do you want to bring?
Yeah. So it's not only knowing the other person, but also knowing yourself. And knowing the value that you bring to the relationship, also the value that they bring to the relationship.
Correct.
And then how the education that you're getting plays into, like you had mentioned, the long-term goals of that relationship.
Because in a program they teach you about leadership, right? What are you leading? Who are you leading? If you don't heal you can't lead someone else. Right? So we have to learn to take care of, it's like feeding your body junk or feeding your body nourishment. How do you want to grow? And so what I've learned in my growth, in my healing process of healing me before allowing someone else to come into my path, I had to make sure I was okay. So that I would be able to now communicate verbally and not just through actions. So maybe the touch of the body, right? That's a trigger for me, right? But he doesn't know that. So how am I able to communicate that? I'm sorry, did something happen? What I've learned is it okay if I touch you? Is it okay if we talk about this? Can I explain this to you with understanding? Because if I can't understand it, I can't share it. And so going into higher education with a partner is extremely important to have those conversations. Here's my finances. This is what my plan is going to be. And if we're planning on doing this a long time or a lifetime, I need you to understand that even though I make this amount of money, 30 grand is going to go here a year. Are you willing to support the weight? Because now it's weight. And if so, how? Because I don't want it to be heavy.
So we can now transition into finances, because I think that's also a great point, which a lot of times finances, even outside of paying for higher education, is a lot of conflict in the relationship because of finances. And higher education is not cheap, okay? It's just not. I don't care where you go. It's just not cheap. And so, a lot of people are trying to get out of debt. Think about higher education. You either think about, we got to pay out of pocket for right now, or we about to go into more debt. Especially, like you said, we're doing this for a short time or a long time. So if we're doing this long term, we're talking about marriage. Now that's our debt that we're going into. So what's your thoughts on that? On communicating on whether we're paying out of pocket, student loans? How do you go into that conversation if you're so passionate about going to school, but the spouse is passionate about getting out of debt, and so you're not on the same page, right? Because it's not always peaches and cream. Even if you communicate, you do all the things, we can lay out a whole plan for how you talk about it, and you're still on separate paths. Then what?
You have to be conscious and respectful for your partner. So then you have to figure out what you're going to do so that you don't bring that debt. Because I heard you say just a second ago, it's our debt. I'm one of those where I'm like, no, that's your debt. I have to be honest. Is that fair though? Right? Because when you're including someone into your life, or someone is including you into their life, it does become one. So now you have to sit down and think of ways to get out of it so it doesn't become our debt, but a paid debt. So I don't want it to be our debt. I want it to be a paid debt. So then what is it that I can do? Because if I'm in higher education or higher learning, then what I want is a way to make it work for me. So what else can I do to make it work for me so that there isn't high debt? Oh, I can write a scholarship letter. Babe, I need help. I need this to make sense because this is how I'm seeing it. So start including the partner in so that they know, he or she knows that, you know what, this might be, less of our debt, but our growth. So I need to write a letter for a scholarship. Let's write that letter. So we think about ways to and sometimes we can foresee it and sometimes we can't, right? Think about ways so that the debt isn't so high.
I think you made a good point because I said our debt. You was like, no, that's your debt. Or is it our debt? And I think that also goes back to the values in a relationship, right? Because some people keep their money separate. And so it's like, okay, you want to go back to college, go be great. That's going to be on your debt. That's going to be your credit. You figure out how to pay it. I'm not interested. And then that works for them. And then some people are like, we have one bank account. And all the money comes in and goes out from this one bank account. And so even how that particular conversation would go will go differently based off of how that couple handles their finances.
Well, not only that, yeah, that's correct, Dr. Lavonya. But my thing is, if it's your bank account, my bank account, right, and it's your debt, not my debt, am I going to watch you suffer? Because
some people might say yes, right? Because we're not talking about. I don't think we were not talking about couples that are all healthy, and that healthy means multiple different things. But somebody may say, "Listen, girl, go be great. I'm going to support you. Go get them student loans. Go do spend whatever money you got to pay." Because even for us, we have to, for the school we're in, we have to go to residency. So we have to pay for hotels. We have to pay for food. We have to do these things to support the education throughout the years. So somebody might say, no, that's yours. I'm not mad at you, but it's yours.
So then what happens in the long run? So now I'm a doctor. I'm getting millions of dollars just to like speak or do a consulting firm or, some kind of leadership role. Do I now exclude him? Like, so those are conversations. And that's what I'm saying is learning the ways to communicate with understanding so that we can all be on the same stream. And the financial burden isn't a life burden. So I believe like higher education is great. And if you have a partner to do it with, it can be healthy. We just have to learn one another.
Yeah, I agree with you. In one of the interviews that we did, we had talked about mutual growth, like personal growth, personal development. And you had made a comment in the beginning of how, in one of the relationships that you were in, he had mentioned you think you're better than me. And right. So how do you think that plays a role in the support of the other person going back to school, if because they could be on a path to doing something else that's developing them. But how do you think that plays a role in mutual growth together?
First, the other person who is planning on going to school has to have strength, and whomever their faith base is, they have to be able to say, you know what, I need this support mentally, emotionally. Because if they're not strong, the words can break them down. And they might not want to fulfill their dreams. And if they're strong enough, they can either have the communication with that person, or they can know right from then and there, like, well, maybe this person isn't for me because this is what I've experienced in life. And so I don't want to be at the lower totem pole. So it's, again, having that conversation. We've sat down, we communicated, this is what happened. I don't want to be here. I don't want to make lesser dollars. I want to make more because the economy is growing, right? So I don't want to be stuck. I think that the other person, to me, you really have to know who you're dealing with. In a conversation, what I could have done was say, hey, what are your insecurities about me being in a higher education?
That's good. That's
But
good.
in my selfish state, I just was like, you know what? You don't see what I see. Let me move this away from me. And so the word toxic came out. You're toxic for my growth. When I could have said, you know what? What are your insecurities? What are you afraid of?
Do you think that would have been a better, because insecurities and fear and being afraid could also be words that are triggering, right? Because people are like, I'm not insecure. I'm not afraid of nothing.
But your actions are.
True.
Because actions are loud.
But I think sometimes the words that we say make people defensive too, even though that's not our intent. But if someone was like, why are you so insecure about A, B, C, and D? I might be like, what? So what's a
but maybe it is insecurity we just never looked at.
True, but I'm saying, how can we say it differently?
I'm
just thinking like how we could, and I think this is for me too, because I'm a very direct person. I'm direct. I do a lot, so I don't have a whole time for cut cards and code, right? And so, somebody said one time I said something, this is a little off topic, but somebody was like, do you miss me? And I was like, no, I don't. Because there's nothing about you that's missable. And, I tolerate you when you're around. And I didn't say that, but I said, I don't miss you. You probably should ask questions that you don't want to answer to, the truth to, because no. And so, like, you're so mean. I said, no, I'm honest.
Right.
And so sometimes our honesty still is offensive, especially if we're in a place or relationship that we want them to understand our point, or we want to be able to have good dialogue. So even finding the words that are not offensive, while it may be true, you may be insecure, you may be, afraid, you may be, that feel failure, right? But how do I say it in a way? Because I think when we're talking about how to engage our partner, I think how we say things is equally as important as the purposeful communication.
I think it's as adults, we have to learn how to stop coddling those that are around us. So when I hear people say I am direct, right? Why can't we be? Right. And so
handle it. I feel like we need to have I think this would be the part 2. I think we need a part 2 and we need a male perspective, right? Because I agree with you, but somebody else might completely disagree with both of us. Because the word even coddling, they'd be like, no, you just are communicating in a way that is receptive to the person you're talking to.
But that's why we have to know who we're dealing with too, right? So now we know triggers. Is it the words? The touch?
That's good. Yeah.
Expression, right? So we have to know who our audience is when we're working with them. And when I say working, is relationships are work. You might not get paid the same, but it's work. And so we have to learn how to balance us, the person, and the relationship.
I want to rewind just a little bit. Because sometimes we get into these relationships and we talk about being equally yoked sometimes. And you might get into a relationship and y'all both were working, you're good. And then you want more. And the more is going back to school. And either the man or the woman's like, we've been doing good for 10 years. Why are you trying to mess this up? Right? And so is there conversations that you should have on the onset? Because I think sometimes you go into a relationship and you may not know, or you may know, but there are people that are go-getters. There are people that, want to consistently learn, lifetime learners. It don't always have to be in a school setting, but you're always wanting to know more, learn more. If there's something that you don't know, you want to learn how to do it better, so you get a certification, or right.
Well, Lavonya, I feel like we always know, though. We always know. So that's where the honesty comes out. We always know.
And we just choose to just be in a relationship, even though we know you're not trying to personally grow. You're not trying to do more with yourself, and we just do it anyway.
I do. I believe so.
That's interesting. So then it's almost like it's our fault that we are decided to be in a relationship with someone that we knew is not interested in growth. How do we manage that?
I think we manage it again by conversation, being honest, and not just, you have to be honest with yourself though, because you don't just pop up one day and say, hey, I want to go to college. You've had this on your thought, and you have to know who you're dealing with, right? So is he or she the one for me? Like, watch the movement, and then you'll know if it's long term or if it's part time.
I think you're right. But I don't have as much insight as you do on it, because both times when I went back to get my master's and my doctorate, I was single, and so I had a thought, and the next day I applied, and like a couple weeks later I was in the program. So a lot for me, because I'm spontaneous and a little what's that word? I have a thought and I do it. I don't know how well that's gonna work out in marriage or relationships, but I think that
I'll come down.
I think that knowing your partner and knowing how they show up is important. So.
Mm-hmm. And how you show up.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't put everything off on them. How you show up.
That's true. So if we got about 4 more minutes left, and so I always like to have takeaways for the people that they can actually, some practical application things that they could do, whether it's with their spouse, whether they're thinking about going back to school. We talked about finances. We talked about mutual growth. We talked about, being able to balance. We didn't go too much into the balance, but being able to balance what you're doing and the new roles as a student. So what are some practical things that we can give people as they are on their journey to higher education, thinking about it? What are some tangible things that we think that they can do?
One thing that I want to share is I remember during one of the interviews with the one couple, and one thing that one of the women said, Miss Bonds, was know your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Know your person. Those are her words. Know your person. And once you know your person, you will know how to communicate. Once you know your person, you would know how to help heal and soothe without feeling like you're that parent. You don't have to coddle the relationship. You don't have to coddle that person. You don't have to diminish you to make them feel comfortable. If you're here to shine, shine.
I like it. So step one is to shine.
Shine.
Step one is to shine. Right. And what's the next one? What else can they do?
So the next one is to know thyself while you're shining, and be honest with you. Set no limits on your growth.
Okay, so shine, know thyself. Anything else you want to tell the people?
Believe in yourself, and then accept your gift. And your gift is your person.
I love that. And we need to know it's our person from the beginning, right? Because
well, and then that's where the conversation comes in, right? Yeah. So you can't just like jump into something and say, oh, he or she is handsome, and this is beautiful, and this is what we're gonna do. It's more than that. It's more than the exterior. What's going on in the inside? So when someone says to you, I'm an introvert by nature, Figure that out. I'm an extrovert by nature. Figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? So, and that's always my thing is, what happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
How did you get here? What are you afraid of? What are you running from?
Mm-hmm.
What are your fears? My
Mm-hmm.
first thing I asked my partner was, what are your fears?
Mm-hmm.
And people said, why was that your first question? Because that's what we need to heal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to bring in what you left.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Well, Laura, thank you for joining us today. This is a great conversation. I feel like we touched on a couple different things. And this conversation could go so many different directions, especially when we're talking about relationships. But things that I took away is communication, letting your light shine, and being with someone that helps you, that encourages you to shine, and not places like not trying to impress you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone that's encouraging you to be great. That can create those spaces for you to be great. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story and the experiences that you've had. And I look forward to the rest of this month. And as we have more conversations with more couples and more people, hope we might be just bouncing to some people on the street talking about this topic. So this was good. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week.